This happened a long time ago, and it really only came up recently when my mom found a picture from this trip while moving some stuff and brought up the story. My dad took his mom, my mom's parents, maternal and paternal aunt and uncle, and my two other siblings to Cancun, Mexico when I was about 8. We were there for 10 days, and the resort had suites as rooms. One night, I stayed with my maternal grandparents in their suite. It was a particularly hot night, and there was no air conditioning, so it was all open windows and screens everywhere. I couldn't sleep, so I woke up my grandma to sing me back to sleep. I know Dick moved to wake her up, but her voice was so angelic. I was laying down looking out the window on my stomach while she was scratching my back and lightly humming My Only Sunshine. The window's view was other suites' balconies, as the resort was almost a C-shaped layout. So my view was another balcony, and their room had no screen but long, gauzy white curtains that were flowing in the window. In between one of them flowing, I saw a man in his mid to late 30s standing on the suite's balcony. It must have been 1 or 2 in the morning because the resort was completely quiet. He sounded like he was sobbing and straddled the balcony post. I was intrigued by this, so I asked my grandma why that man was climbing off his balcony. She turns toward the window and asks where I see this man, but after minutes of trying to point him out, she says frustratingly that she can't see him and tells me to lie back down. He was still sobbing, and to the point where both legs were over the balcony posts. He was getting ready to jump. I tried to explain to my grandma that this man is going to fall, but she gets mad and tells me that was enough, and not to make jokes like that. Me being 8 didn't understand why she was upset. So right before I lay my head back down, I hear the man yell and see him drop. I then sat up, crying and pleading with my grandma to see if the man was all right. She got up, went out to the balcony, and said no one was there. I was so upset that she called the front desk to ask them if they had had any sort of report. Their response didn't seem to trouble her at the time, because she told me that the front desk said I was silly and told me to go back to bed. I warily obliged, but was still worried. Jump forward 17 years, and my mom brought me a picture from that trip of my grandma and I on the beach. She told me the story I just repeated, but it was told to her by her mom, my grandma. She told me how freaked out my grandma was about it, because when my grandma called the front desk that night, the manager happened to answer, and he told her someone did in fact commit suicide from that balcony, but it happened a couple of weeks before we even got there. The suite was still closed off due to security, so no one was in that room the night I saw the event unfold. I completely forgot about what I saw because I didn't think it was important since my grandma dismissed it. But when my mom told me what happened, it was like a floodgate was opened in my memory. It truly freaks me out that I saw that at such a young age, and the feelings I had that night of seeing it happen and not being able to do anything about it. I pretty much watched a man I didn't even know commit suicide again, and didn't realize until 17 years later that he wasn't even real. It also spooks me that I was the only one who could see it, especially hear it. My grandma has unfortunately passed since finding this photo, otherwise I would have asked her about it. My mom said my grandma only brought it up that one time to tell her, and that she had a hard time telling her because she was so disturbed by it. This happened this past summer. This encounter starts with me and 5 of my best buds wanting to chill and have a fire with some beers. It's something that we did in the past and have continued to do since. The problem being that in Toronto you can't have a fire in parks. So my friends and I go down to this part of the beach which is technically supposed to be covered by security patrol, but never is, and start collecting firewood. This part of the beach has a filtration plant near it, and a ledge overhangs before the beach starts. So it's quite a large drop-off that creates a lot of shadows, and we start clearing out this section of beach of driftwood, so we begin moving closer to the overhang. "You guys trying to have a fire?" This voice appeared out of nowhere, and it was directly behind me and right next to one of my friends. My stomach sank, and the only thing I managed to say is, "What the fuck?" And the guy kinda laughs and says, "Oh sorry, didn't mean to scare you guys." which led to us immediately letting down our guards, thinking that this guy was chill. After that initial scare, we kind of laughed and talked a bit before he continues on with what he first said.
If you guys are gonna have a fire, you should probably go over to Secret Beach, or the guard will see you.
Secret Beach sounds kind of stupid, but it's a pretty well-known spot in this part of Toronto. And it's really just a beach that's not accessible without hopping a fence and sliding down some bluffs. Hence secret. We all kind of knew this, but Secret Beach really is kind of sketchy. Plus it smells like piss. But we agreed with him anyway. So one of my friends says, "Yeah, alright, we'll do that instead." And to that, the stranger just says,
"Cool. Just if you see anyone, please don't tell them I'm here."
Okay, that's kind of a weird thing to say. But this dude is homeless and he'll probably just be forced to leave, so that makes sense. So that ends our meeting with that guy under the filtration plant overhang. I never did see his face. Realistically, I don't think I wanted to. I really just wanted to leave, and so did my friends. Which is why I think we all thought it would be a good idea to follow the advice of a faceless stranger. So we pick up our wood and cardboard and start the 2-minute trip back up and across the filtration plant to see where it overhangs Secret Beach. This is where we start thinking and letting fear dictate our actions. We decide let's not, because it's really dark in Secret Beach at that time, and we were not willing to go down there. Our new plan, fuck the security guard. We'll have our fire right here. It's kinda out of sight with the hill blocking the view. The night goes on. Nothing really weird happened for another like 30 or 45 minutes. That's when 3 guys walk out of the entrance to Secret Beach. I had a pretty good buzz going and I said, "Yo, what up?" And they didn't say anything. They just stood there. We were all like, well, that's weird, but whatever, we're having fun. We kept laughing and chilling for another 15 minutes, but I keep looking back and they're just standing there. I can't see their faces because the light from the lamps is behind them. And when I looked back for what must have been the 100th time, one of them adjusted how they were standing, and I saw it. The glint of a bat. Holy shit, they all have bats. That's when I stood up and said, "Alright, those guys have bats. It's time to leave. Fuck the fire, just go." We didn't want to make it seem like we were scared, so we just got up and began to stroll off, which I thought saved us a lot of confrontation. And then one of them said,
"You think you can call us bitches?"
Whoa, what? They think we disrespected them somehow? We were just chilling. So I yell back, "What? No, we were just chilling here." They didn't believe us. They were following us and repeated,
"You think you can call us bitches?"
So again I replied, "Nah bro, what the fuck? We don't even know you, chill." This actually made them ask another question.
"Oh yeah? What school you guys go to?"
This was a loaded question. I went to a private school downtown, but all my friends there went to the public one right nearby. So I lied and said some school in the next town. They stopped. They were clearly looking for someone else.
"Oh really? What are your names?"
They asked. And I fed them some fake names, and the only thing I heard was,
"Shit."
Now these motherfuckers were still pretty far, but we're uphill, so I have no doubt they would have caught up to us. And when I heard that, I just wanted to make sure they weren't going to follow us anymore. We good?
"Yeah, we good."
And when we heard that, we just walked away. Running probably would have caused them to start chasing after us. We then went to the security guard and told them there were 3 guys threatening us with bats back there, and he thanked us and I guess went to go check it out. Walking back home after that, I was just thinking how something could get so convoluted, and why were those guys just walking around with bats? It could be bad place, bad time, but what I really think happened was that stranger was hiding from those guys. I think he wanted us to go get the shit kicking he was supposed to get. Writing this out now makes the events not seem as scary as I remember, but man, my heart was racing. One wrong move and I seriously think we would have gotten destroyed by those metal bats. So to the coward in the dark and those 3 fucks with bats, let's not meet. I met a man once who knew everything about me, and he said he jumped off the San Francisco Bridge many years ago. I was 19 or 20 at the time, and I was living in Savannah, Georgia. I drank a lot. had a crappy fake ID. I worked this terrible job as a grunt laborer, the kind where you go to those temp labor agencies like Able Body and Labor Finders. I'd show up at 4 a.m., work until 5 p.m., and drink myself to sleep after only taking home maybe $60 for the day. I was supposed to go into work this particular morning, but I decided to skip. It's a labor agency, they'll just find somebody else. I call the girlfriend and tell her I want to go to the beach. I had already started drinking. She comes over. We hop in my big, ugly van, pack up some rods, and head to the beach. I decided to have a drink across from the beach at this little bar. This is where the story gets interesting. Shortly after ordering my drink, I get this really weird feeling. I became hyper-aware of my surroundings. The door opens, and I see this guy walk in out of my peripheral vision. There was a seat between my girlfriend and I, but the bar was empty. It was like 9 a.m., and he could have sat anywhere else, yet he chooses to sit right between us. Then he starts doing this thing with his fingers. The bar top was reflective, and he takes his fingers like two little legs and starts walking and skating with them on the top of the counter. I took notice because when I was in school, I did that all the time. I pretended I had rollerblades on my fingers and that I was skating around my desk. I hated school and was always distracting myself, so I became kind of mesmerized. That's when he looks at me, and he says,
I notice you're a man who pays attention to detail. I'm also a man who pays attention to detail.
Now before I continue, I have to describe this guy. He had this short, spiky hair that was bleached at the tips, kind of like a late 90s style. He had really expensive clothes on, like a nice Prada leather jacket, designer jeans, and really nice boots. He seemed like a kind of gay guy with awesome fashion sense and really distinctive taste. I always remember this because I thought some weird homeless crazy guy couldn't have afforded those clothes. Anyway, the other thing that stuck out was his eyes. They were piercingly gray. It reminded me of like a husky's eyes, but his pupils just stayed this disturbing pinpoint size. They were just extremely small, which caused his look to be kind of terrifying. His teeth were normal, but not at the same time. I don't know how to explain it. They were sharper than they should be, as if they were filed slightly. His hands seemed okay, but his fingernails were long and pointed, as if he deliberately did it. He kept licking his teeth, too, like he was salivating. The thing about this guy is that you look at him and everything seems normal, but just a little bit off at the same time. So you're questioning if you're crazy for thinking this. This guy then starts talking about the relationship between me and my girlfriend, but really strangely. He's talking about how beautiful she is and how I should pay more attention to her. I was kind of a dick to her. Shortly after he began talking like this, I had this almost knowing feeling come over me, like I knew this guy was not a human. I look at my girlfriend and say, "You need to leave." She just kind of looks at me like she knows too. Without a word of protest, she gets up quietly and leaves. Later I learned that she went next door to get a coffee. That's when this guy says to me with the utmost confidence,
You were supposed to go fishing today.
He points at the beach across the street.
If you had, I would have drowned you in that ocean.
And I shit you not, he fucking hissed. Again, for some reason this overwhelming calm had come over me. I just ask, "Who are you?" He answers back with this crazy guttural language. It sounded Arabic or Hebrew or something. So I say it in a way that I can understand. He says,
You can call me Jimmy C. I jumped off the San Francisco Bridge years ago, and we've been watching you.
From there on out, he never referred to himself as me or I, but only we. The conversation became something very strange after this. He was saying things like,
We see you taking a bath. We wish we too could feel the warmth of the water and the comfort of the steam.
And other stuff. He kept buying me drinks, specifically whiskey sours. It was like he had an endless supply of money. He smoked Marlboro ultralight cigarettes. After I don't know how long, because I lost sense of time kind of, I told him I'm going to leave. I walked next door and get my girlfriend and she's stone silent. We start driving home. Don't say a word. Then I just ask, "Do you know what that was?" And she says, "That was a demon." This girl was really analytical, completely non-religious, and that was the first thing she said. Now, I didn't say this part before, because to me, this is the most important aspect of the story, so I'll say it now, because it's what happened after this that screwed me up for fucking years. The last thing this Jimmy C guy said to me before I left is this.
Look at my car.
I look outside and I see one of those newer Volkswagen Beetles. It was white.
What does the license plate say?
I look at the plate and it literally says fierce. He looks me dead in the eyes and says,
The next time you see me, I'll be driving a black Mercedes, and the license plate will say Utopia.
Stupid, right? That night I was still calm. I don't know why. I felt like that guy on Office Space after his hypnotherapist died right in front of him, and he was weirdly zen. But my girlfriend started having terrible nightmares of this guy's head, just staring at her in her dreams. Weeks went by, and that's when the encounter started affecting me. I found myself becoming paranoid about that black fucking Mercedes. Every black car I saw, I checked if it was a Mercedes. If it was, I immediately looked at the license plate. I started doing it when I watched TV or movies as well. I couldn't stop. Now I'm going to fast forward a bit. About 10 years go by. I'm 29, and in silence when I'm alone, when I'm drinking, I often think about this encounter. I'll still look at a black Mercedes every time they pass, but I'm not so much anxious about it anymore, just curious. I remembered that my girlfriend at the time always kept a journal. By now I'm pretty sure that I'm insane. Maybe I was drunk. Maybe I'm not remembering any of this correctly. After years of trying to find news articles of a Jimmy C that committed suicide off the San Francisco Bridge, looking at black cars and so on, I feel like I'd grown out of it, yet still I had to know. So last year I tracked down my ex-girlfriend. We ended on bad terms. I find out she's a school teacher in Wisconsin, has married a woman, and is actually trying to have a child. I figure she's not going to talk to me, but I send her a Facebook message anyway. I ask her if she can find the journal from that day, because I have to know if her events line up with mine. Sure enough, she had it, and it contained even more detail than what I remembered. She had written it right after it happened. If I ever do see the black Mercedes with a license plate that says Utopia, something is gonna go down. When I was a freshman in high school in Houston, I made friends with a senior in my dance class, Becky. She was a very tall girl, standing over 6 feet, but she wasn't very bright. In fact, she was actually kind of slow. She had epilepsy, and I think the lifetime of grand mal seizures had done a number on her. She was not completely inept, but she was slow on the uptake and had rather poor judgment. Still, I loved her like a sister while we were friends, and we became inseparable. Even after she graduated, she was still one of my closest friends, and it wasn't until her rather unstable mother decided to pull some stuff that I won't mention here that we finally fell out of favor with one another. But looking back on it as an adult, it probably was for the best. I say this because of that poor judgment she had that I mentioned earlier. Her judgment wasn't just bad, it was almost non-existent. Her friends became my friends, and they were by far some of the weirdest and quirkiest people I have ever met. This is the story of just one of those friends. John was his name. John was a big fellow, and he was a little slower on the uptake as well. I do not know his entire backstory, so I cannot say why he was this way, but he was not the brightest bulb in the box, and tended to make decisions without thinking about them. Still, he was Becky's boyfriend, and so the love I had for her rubbed off to him. I don't know if he was just socially awkward or if he was genuinely slow, but either way, John and I became rather close as the years went by. And by the time I was in junior high school, he was one of those friends that managed to make it to everything I did as a group. He had never done anything to make me think he was truly unhinged, nor make my parents think he was a real threat. My father was wary of him, but more because he was weird. This changed, however, when I entered my senior year of high school. Becky and John had broken up during my junior year, but John was still a good friend to the entire group, so we all still hung out on a regular basis. Becky was now with a new guy, George. Becky and George had been together for about a year, and John and George were actually good friends. So when we all decided to go to Galveston for a day at the beach, everyone was on board. At this time, I was dating one of Becky's friends, Nate, which turned out to be disastrous for me, but that's a story for another day. So we all loaded up in both John and George's trucks and went down to Galveston with two other friends, Fred and Sarah. Everything was perfectly peachy keen fine until we parked on the beach and started hanging out. At this particular beach during this time, you could park your vehicle directly on the sand, about 20 feet from the water. The entire time we were there, John was acting very strange. He would not move away from his truck and come play with us in the water, nor would he engage in any activities while we were there. He just watched us from his truck with a very strange expression and smoked cigarette after cigarette. He looked like he was in deep thought, but angry about whatever it was he was thinking about. You have to realize that just 30 minutes prior, he had been perfectly fine and was laughing and joking with us like he usually did. But he was a completely different person on the beach, almost like he had come unhinged. Still, we had spent so much time around him that even though this change of character was weird, we didn't think anything of it. We were there for quite a long time, and eventually Becky came over to talk to me. She said John wanted to leave. We all went over to ask him what was wrong, and he got incredibly curt with us. He would not tell us why, or even talk to us, especially Becky and myself. No matter how much we asked, he would not tell us what was wrong. Eventually, we all agreed that it would just be best if we left, as it would soon be getting late anyways. So we all loaded up in the trucks and decided to find somewhere to eat before we headed home from the island. So Becky and Sarah loaded up in George's truck, and Nate, Fred, and myself loaded up in the back bed of John's truck, as we were all incredibly dirty from playing at the beach all day. John had just washed his truck, and we wanted to enjoy the night air. This was by far the stupidest decision we made all night. It was about 10 minutes into the ride when we noticed that John was not driving to the restaurant we had agreed to meet up at. In fact, he wasn't driving anywhere that we knew of. We tried knocking on the back window to get his attention, but he would not answer, and when we tried to open it, we found it to be locked. This is about the time John started speeding up. It wasn't long before he was racing at speeds of 60 to 70 miles per hour through smaller town roads and running red lights. George, thankfully, had caught on that something was wrong and was tailing behind us to catch up and make sure he didn't lose sight of us. Nate and I started pounding on the back window as hard as we could and screaming at him to stop, while Fred yelled around the side of the truck through the open window. But John just kept going faster and faster, taking us deeper into areas that we were completely clueless of. This in and of itself, without our friend being unhinged, was incredibly dangerous, as Galveston Island at the time was notorious for people going missing or being murdered. By the time George caught up to John, the truck was speeding down the road at 80 miles an hour, with 3 people unsecured in the truck bed, trying desperately to hang on for dear life. I have no idea how he managed to blast through all those red lights without being T-boned, but I'm grateful for it to say the least. It took George about another 10 minutes to finally force John to slow down and pull over. Honestly, I can't answer as to how he accomplished this, as at this point I was face down in the bed of the truck sobbing my eyes out. I also have no idea why Becky, Sarah, or George didn't call the police, and they all got an earful out of me for that after everything had calmed down. When the truck finally stopped, I bolted out of the bed so fast I nearly knocked Becky down. John stepped out of his truck with a tire iron in his hand and started screaming at George, advancing like he was about to beat all of us upside the head with it. I don't know what made him change his mind, but I suspect him being up against 3 guys who were nearly as big as he was part of it. George, Nate, Sarah, and John screamed at each other for a few minutes before John turned around and loaded back up in his truck. He took off out of the parking lot we had pulled into so fast he left skid marks on the pavement. After that, none of us would speak to him anymore, and he quickly found himself cast out of our little group. We all theorized that he had to have been on some sort of drugs that night, but I can't be certain. I do know that he called Sarah several times after that, and either didn't say anything when she answered, or would start screaming at her and threatening her. She ended up having to change her number after that. Thankfully, that ban from the group stuck, because there were several times I had to pass his house on my way to school. and the times he was outside, he'd stop whatever he was doing and glare at me in such a hateful way that I became fearful of going near his house. I have no idea what happened to him after that, or if he's still living there, but I never want to run into him again. I've since moved quite a distance away from there, so it's very likely I never will. When I was 11 years old, my Little League baseball team went on a 4-day camping trip during the season as sort of a fun team-building excursion. We drive like maybe 2 to 3 hours to a pretty standard campground in southern New England. There was maybe a handful of adults, including my father who was helping out as a coach, then about 16 boys aging from 10 to 12. Anyway, the weekend was a total washout. The first day and night were beautiful, and after that, fucking monsoon for 3 days. The parents made us stay because it was character building, but really, the dads just wanted to drink brews without the wives. Third afternoon, everyone is miserable. I had the worst crotch rot you could imagine because of the wetness. I didn't even want to walk, let alone run around. Nobody wanted to do anything, but the campground had a huge lake we hadn't gone in because of the weather. But then we decided we did want to swim, because it was still humid and warm. And swimming in the rain is way less miserable than sitting in the rain. So like I said, it was a huge lake. Swimming areas roped off with buoys at both ends, and at the deepest part of each swimming area there were floating docks to jump off. Obviously, being competitive boys, we decided let's swim to the far dock and back, even though you're not supposed to. I don't know how far it was, but far for kids, but it's fine if you can float and conserve energy. So we're all pretty pumped up to go except for one kid. He was your typical scrawny nerd with glasses. He probably only played baseball because his dad made him, but he stunk at all things athletic. Anyway, we all loved him and called him the Professor, because he was a fucking walking encyclopedia. He tells us he can't swim well, but doesn't want to get left behind. I was only 11, but I was always big for my age, and my parents made me learn early, so I was a strong swimmer. Everyone wanted to race, but I tell him, screw these guys, I'll stay with you the whole time. We'll go slow, no big deal. So everyone takes off and swims off to the other end, and by the time we get halfway, they're already heading back. I'm like, let's just go back with them, who cares? But nope, he gets stubborn and he wants to go all the way. Whatever, he's doing okay, even though he's slow, and I'm bobbing up and down doing flips and taking it easy. So finally we get to the other dock and I boost him up and make him rest, because there's no way he's making the swim back without resting. Meanwhile, all our teammates are at the other end, taunting us, calling us pussies and whatnot. So Professor is rushing me to go back. Okay, fine. But I notice he's struggling hard on the way back, but he's refusing my help. I'm starting to get annoyed, so I swim out ahead of him a little bit. Now we're a third of the way back, and all of a sudden he's yelling behind me, "Hunter! Hunter! Come back, I'm stuck! I'm stuck!" I don't even look back. Dude, I just swam there. We're in a lake, cut the shit. Like I said, I was losing patience with him. I swear my left leg is stuck. I can't move. You gotta come back. It's fucking weeds, dude. Pull them off and let's go. I'm not coming back. I kinda glance back finally, and I see him trying to pull up his leg. I'm still not concerned. All of a sudden, his whole body submerges quickly, and he bounces back up. Something's fucking got me. I can't move. Come back. Seriously. Bam. He dunks under the water and pops up again. Okay, he's fucking with me now. This is bullshit. Fucking stop, man. Not funny. Let's go. He goes under again, but this time it lasts a little longer. He comes back up screaming bloody murder. Something's got him. It's pulling him under. He can't move. I'm still skeptical, but his face is sheer panic. And I'm like, shit, maybe he is drowning. I swim back to him as fast as I can, but he goes under again and doesn't come up. I dive down where I saw him last, find him and start hauling him up. Shit, I just let him drown. Holy fuck. He weighs a ton. I can barely get him back to the surface and he's struggling hard. I finally get him above the water, and his face is pure terror at this point. Get it off me! It's pulling me down! Get it off! I was just down there. Nothing's got you. You're just tired. I'll pull you back. I'm pulling this little kid as hard as I can and we're not moving. We're both getting really tired and I know something is wrong. By this time, the other kids noticed that something was happening. I'm screaming for them to go get the parents. He's drowning. Nobody fucking moves. They all think we're fucking around. I start screaming at them like I've never screamed before. Finally, they realize I'm serious, and 2 kids take off sprinting towards the camp, maybe a mile away. I'm yelling for someone to come help me, but they're too afraid to swim out. Professor is struggling to stay above water, even with me pulling him up. I can actually feel his body jerking towards the bottom. At first I thought maybe seaweed or a branch, and now I'm like, is this some kind of snake? Eel? Some kind of freshwater octopus I've never heard of? My 11-year-old brain is racing, thinking of mermaids and swamp things. I reach my panic limit and I'm like, I gotta go back and get help. I just wanted to get out of there, get away from whatever it is. He grabs me like a vice, like I'm talking savage strength from this little kid. You can't leave me. I'll die. You will kill me. Get it off. Don't leave me. It's pouring. We're in a murky-ass lake that you can't see a foot down in the water. I do not want to go under and find out what has him. The gravity of what was happening hit me like a freight train. This kid's going to die, and it's my fault. I have to do something. I'm hyperventilating, losing my nerve by the second. I summon all the courage I have and dive down to his feet, not wanting to know what was there. There's nothing there. No weeds, no animals, nothing but water. I grab his left leg and I'm pulling it with everything I got. I cannot move him an inch. There's no way he can be holding it this still on his own. This is fucked up. I start just thrashing everywhere, thinking if something has him that I can't see, maybe I can scare it away. I'm trying to keep him afloat, dive down, pull him free, come back up for air, and go back down. At this point I was exhausted, and I think I'm going to drown too. Where's my dad? Or his dad? I go under one more time and just pull with the last of my energy, and all of a sudden, he's loose. Whatever it was, let go. He grabs me around my neck so I can barely breathe. I'm like, do not let go because I'm not fucking stopping. I swam back to the other beach like fucking Michael Phelps on PCP. Of course, just as we get back, the parents are running up the hill to the beach. I'm too exhausted to talk. He's fucking catatonic. His dad is screaming at me that I tried to kill his kid. He's standing over me yelling, and I swear he's about to hit me, because neither his son or I can talk to tell him what's going on. My dad came out of nowhere, and I kid you not, bitch slaps this dude onto his ass.
Get the fuck off my kid. What's wrong with you, asshole? They're friends.
Finally, Professor caught his breath and says, he saved me. Something had me, was pulling me down, and he stayed with me and got it off. He wouldn't leave. Now everybody's looking at me, asking what it was. I can still barely talk. I don't know. He was stuck. It was nothing. Well, it was something, but there was nothing down there. We couldn't move. I don't know. Meanwhile, Professor has a giant bruise around his left ankle. It's so swollen it looks broken. We're just looking at each other, like nobody else can possibly understand what just happened, or what that terror felt like. Finally, it stops raining and everyone is calming down. We go back to the camp. Everyone is saying I'm a hero. I don't want to talk about it or talk to anyone. Something was just wrong, you know? Professor won't come out of the camper, and my dad tried a couple times to talk to me, but could tell I was screwed up about it and left me alone. The next morning, we pack up our stuff, happy to leave, and start driving out. As we drive by the lake, we see cop cars, ambulances, divers, the whole 9 yards. My dad pulls up.
What's going on? A girl went missing yesterday morning. We just found her body in the lake.
Apparently, she was a competitive swimmer. She was doing her morning laps, and then nobody knew where she went. It was a big campground, so her parents figured she was off with friends. And when she never showed up for dinner, the search started. They found her body at the bottom of the lake. There was an old fishing boat that sank. She found it and was fooling around investigating. She got caught on some kind of rigging, panicked and drowned, hours before we ever went to the lake. The professor and I just started bawling uncontrollably in the back seat. It just hit us. Everything made sense and we just knew. I kinda talked to my parents about it after, but I was 11. It sounded crazy, and I hated thinking about it, let alone talking about it. Flash forward 16 years. Professor has never gone in another natural body of water in his life. I ended up becoming a lifeguard and then joining the Coast Guard when I could. Everybody kinda knew why, so it kinda shaped my life. We went to different schools after that, but years later I ran into him at a bar crawl, and we finally talked about it. It was kind of like closure for both of us. Hey guys and ladies, thanks for watching. If you want me to tell your story, or read a creepypasta, email me at the address in the description. Come follow me on Twitter and Instagram at CoreyRhino. Be good to animals, even people. Shit.
And now, the never-released ending of the never-ending story.
Then my first wish is... Yeah!
Falcor, it's even more beautiful than I thought.
Like it?
Falcor, it's wonderful. Falcor, it's like the nothing never was.
What would you like to wish for next?
Yeah! Look, there they are! It's a monster! Quick, down the alley! Get him, Falcor! Let's see how you like it, shit asses! We're gonna get you guys! No, Falcor, stop! Stop eating them! No! Drop it! I wanted you to scare them, not kill them.
Ja, snämar, Bergsbus, Hrish. Leaving so soon? Hmm?
I was just trying to...
Sneak away.
Yeah, I mean, no.
I like children. I'm a luck dragon. Could you get round and scratch my balls? I just can't seem to reach them.
Right here?
Yes. Oh.